Hello and welcome to Shape the System, where we find and tell the stories that help people to rethink the way the world works. We interview people from all over the world who are helping to change our systems for the better. Shape the System is an independent podcast with support from KPMG High Growth Ventures, who help ambitious founders and their teams scale up for success. More about KPMG High Growth Ventures after the interview. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Shape the System. We're going to be talking to Ari Tulla today. We're going to be talking about health and a whole bunch of things around personalization of health and health outcomes, and maybe even some topical stuff as well. So, Ari, welcome to the show. Just let us know a little bit about where you're coming from today, geographically and also maybe thematically, and then we can dive straight into the problem space as we always do.
Hey, Vincent. Great to be here. I'm calling from San Francisco. Beautiful, sunny day today after all the fog kind of laying in already. I'm from Finland and been here for about 16 years. I've been building, companies, startups for a while. I was very lucky to get into first company when I went to university, 98 already. And even before that, I was dabbling with the early internet that we call something else before, BBS and all the games and stuff in the beginning. And last 16 years I've been here in the Bay Area. Last about 14 years I've been building healthcare companies.
Yeah, and you talked just before we came on the show about this being your third company. Give me some sense of the other two companies, like what's led you to Elo and kind of the space that we're going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah, I think it's important. I'm a kind of person, maybe it comes with age when you do things and you start to appreciate more the why than the what. And I often gravitate to the why nowadays a lot more than the what. What you can read on LinkedIn and on the papers. But for me, healthcare became a calling a long time ago. So my wife had a thyroid tumor 2000, so a long time ago. And that led into having a fist-sized tumor on her neck. And it had to be taken, of course, out by the doctors. And, we high-fived with them and they did the best work they could. And, they took it out. There was nothing, beyond that. But they had to also remove partially of the thyroid. And that led into autoimmune diseases, hormonal imbalances, these complicated unknowns that we don't know what to do about. And at that time, it wasn't a big deal. We were in our 20s and, we were in love. We were not thinking about having a family. But basically that side effect made it impossible to have a family, have kids. And of course, after a while, that starts to bug you because, think about your offspring and, you want to have a family in the end. So we spent about a decade with my wife to figure out a way to solve that. And food became medicine in the end. We went deep into Eastern medicine, Western medicine. We spent a lot of money with different doctors and finally had a doctor in California who was able to point us into anti-inflammatory diet. That was a brand new idea. Today it's becoming more and more common. This was some while ago, 15 years ago. And that helped us to finally get pregnant. We had to go IVF route and we very unlucky in the end. We lost our first son. So that was a big battle of our life. And, we were building our stuff and we were living our life, but we had this side narrative that really was taking a lot of energy and time of our life. And today we have kids who are 9 and 5 and they're doing great and, they're all healthy. So outcome was wonderful. But, after we lost our first son, we decided to kind of, pause our life. I was working on mobile gaming right when the mobile gaming started to go off. And, all these companies like Rovio and Supercell and others, became big and iPhone came out. And I decided to, go out of that world and went in to build a healthcare company, a doctor finder company. And we also started a small investment vehicle with little money we had and started to invest in healthcare startups. My wife also went into her, different way and in the end became a KonMari consultant, worked with Marie Kondo, for example, helping people to, clean up stuff. And before that, she was, running corporate and helping companies like Nike and Starbucks and was leading a political party. So our life changed completely. And after that, I've really been building, I spent almost a decade of my life in building 2 companies called BetterDoctor and helping Quest Analytics as a CEO to focus on helping people find healthcare, access care. And it's a very meaningful problem. We partially lost our son because we didn't have the right care at that moment. And it felt really bad for us, of course. And there are many people in the world who had that problem. And the simple idea was that you have more data about the toaster on Amazon than you have about the doctor who will open your heart. Like that's unbelievable. Like we have to change that. And we did help, millions of people. Today, 200 million people in the US use data that my companies are possibly creating. So I love that. We started with my problem and my family problem, and then we helped millions and millions of people. So I feel really good about that and very grateful. So the same thing we are now trying to do at Elo. We're trying to do the same thing, like helping people to access better nutrition, because food was medicine, helped me to have a family and my wife also in the first place.
Yeah, and I kind of want to lean on one of the points you're making there, and I'm inferring it, but I want to make sure I'm landing it, which was the issue that you confronted personally, but then also saw through kind of BetterDoctor and Quest Analytics was around information asymmetry. There's a whole bunch of solution out there, and people either don't have access to it, don't know how to access it and get through to it, or don't know how to relate to it. And there's a whole raft of issues. And when you start to look at Elo, you're starting to basically tackle an information asymmetry problem first and foremost, that then leads to, well, how do we then productize that and put that into someone's hands? Can we start by firstly understanding kind of the magnitude of this problem? And it's okay to understand this in the US context, but I want to kind of go a level deeper, because you'll always hear the stats of, and I think there's one even on your website, 70% of the US has some form of chronic condition. So I want to kind of go a level deep further and understand why do they have these chronic conditions? Like, what is causing this? Like, let's get to root cause, and then we can understand, well, where Elo kind of fits in.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing. If you think about old photos, I don't know if everybody has seen photos from like even 70s or 60s from the beach. You can go, Google like, beach in Australia or beach in New York or wherever in 70s and 60s, and nobody was fat. I mean, it's like unbelievable. You're like, what the heck? And then you go take a look at the photos from last year. They are totally different. And we don't see when history changed when we're living it. So it happens gradually to us and to the world around us. We normalize it. But today in the Western world, and almost in every country today, half the world population is overweight. In the US, we are very close of hitting 50% of people who are obese. We are leading the world on that chart, which is not a great chart to be leading. And of course, I know Australia and many of the countries in Europe are not far behind. So why is that happening? That's a really good question. And it is not a simple answer like, food is bad, or we don't move enough, or we are too stressed. It's all of them combined. And I think if I think about this, like, what is the root cause? What is the ground zero? I think it's the moment when we made post-war, we started to build a very efficient food system. A system that is able to feed people at unbelievably low prices. Yes, we complain about inflation and so forth, but almost every year for the last 100 years, we have spent less and less money of a total income in food. We used to spend, like 30%. Today, it's like very, very small percentage. And yes, I know food is still maybe expensive to many, but we have to keep in mind that, it is absolutely lower, much lower than it was even 30 years ago if you compare the total income that people have. And we are so good at building these foods that are ultra processed. They are kind of food, they look like food, but they are really optimized vehicles of delivering fat and sugar and salt into our bodies. And they are addictive. I don't know, people have maybe heard about the studies with rats that sugar is as addictive as heroin. And what we do now, we are feeding our kids with, still today, we are feeding our kids with like chocolate milk at school when they're 5 years old. We pay that. The parents pay that with our taxes, or we directly pay for it. And that's insane. Like we have to stop doing that. I'm fine if, everybody is eating whatever they want. That's your decision. But why do we need to poison our children already at young age? So that to me is just something that I don't really understand. So food is the main cause, but also, I was there, at Nokia when we were building the first smartphone, N95, for example, in that team. And, little we knew only 20 years ago that, or less, that, this device is going to be spawning a world where 5 billion people have a phone or computer in the pocket, and they are addicted to it in a way that they spend 5 hours a day on these screens. Namely, of course, Meta, Facebook, and Instagram, and others, and email, and then entertainment. But that, of course, has rewired our brain. We are more stressed, we sleep worse. We don't move enough at all. Like, our cities are not made to be moved. Maybe the climate is getting hotter, we don't be outside. So anyway, all those issues are impacting. But literally, we are metabolically sick. Up to 80% of people in the Western world is metabolically sick. We are on a way to become sick with type 2 diabetes, with heart disease. And then, of course, the overweight, obesity is kind of the, I don't know if it's a root or the beginning of the end, but, that is what you see when you look around you. So it's a really dire situation today.
Yeah. And like the thing that I'm trying to, and this is when I was kind of researching this coming in, and we've had a few chats about health and nutrition. And what I'm trying to understand is kind of the distinction between what needs to go in from terms of intake, in terms of what you eat, what you should never put in, and then what you should also be doing. And which of the, I mean, just to your point earlier, these things are all important, but is it possible to have good health without all three? Or is it essentially a case of you have to start here, you have to start by not putting this stuff in, and then you start by making sure you have this stuff, and then finally you complete the picture by a whole set of activities and behaviors that round that out and make those things useful? Like, help me kind of understand the pieces of the kind of the nutritional puzzle, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I think like I said, it's complicated, but there are certain things we know. I think what I have learned the most in the last, let's say, almost 20 years of trying to be a kind of caregiver and also trying to go along. And I'm an athlete myself, so I try to optimize my body, and people call me a biohacker for a long time already. But for me, I think sugar is probably the one thing that has caused most harm. So in the 70s, there was a study done that was done in the US and in the UK, more or less the same data in both places. They looked at it differently, and the outcome was that the US study won, and it said that fat is bad, sugar is okay. The UK result said that sugar is bad, fat is better. And that started this light revolution. Still today, you go to a milk aisle or dairy aisle in your store and look at it. Half the products have a word light or such. And we have fortified that food, like a yogurt, with a lot of sugar. So we are getting now more and more sugar still every day in our bodies. And sugar used to be this sort of a thing that, when we were living in a cave or we were foraging, we got berries and honey, once a month, and we were lucky, or once a year. And our body was like taking it in and moving it into our body, turning it into fat immediately. So the funny thing is that most people don't realize, even today, we talk about it in everywhere already, but fat is not usually translating into fat in your body. Sugar translates into fat in your body.
Right.
That's just not
counterintuitively.
Like if you reverse those two by name, you are more correct. So that to me is unbelievably silly. And I would say fat is great. There are a lot of bad fats and stuff like that. But the fact we are eating sugar is really turning us really fat and unhealthy. And that we have to stop. We have to stop adding sugar in all type of food. And of course, us as consumers, what can we do? One thing I tell everybody, I mean, often people, many people do intermittent fasting in the morning. They don't eat the breakfast. That's fine. That's fine. But who eat the breakfast, stop eating carbs in the morning. That will change everything. That's the simplest thing you can do. You can have an omelette in the morning, or you can have like a low glycemic smoothie, for example, with, let's say, protein powder, avocado, maybe like, yogurt with no sugar. And that's very tasty. And then you're not going to eat as many calories in that day if you start with the low glycemic, protein heavy breakfast. That is, you maybe eat 20% less throughout the day, and let's say multiply that by 1,000 days, you're actually going to lose weight. And then, lunch, of course, should more be like a salad or whatnot. And then dinner should be your time. Do whatever you want, but don't do it too late, and don't drink alcohol too late either. Those are the simple rules, and snacking to me is insane. Like, we are like, go any store today in any country, and you have like, miles of snacks. And you go out with people, and you see like everybody has like snacks in the backpack, in the pockets, and they're like stuffing snacks every place. Like we're gonna die of hunger if we go out, 5 minutes. Like you're not going to die of hunger. I fast every month, or no, every quarter for 5 days. And I'm never died. I mean, I'm still alive. So I've done it many years already. So those are some simple things that I think people should think about. To stop the overeating sugar. That will save you, I think, and give you 10 more years probably.
And so, like, this, I would say, to a degree, this knowledge in some form is relatively widespread and known. What's the disconnect in terms of this pillar? Well, I want to get on to personalization and Elo in a bit, but I want to just, with this pillar of getting the basics right, if you want to call it that, what do you think the disconnect is between that and the large majority of people who don't engage with that information, don't put that information to work for themselves? Like, is it a behavioral change? Is it an access thing? Like, why aren't the people who aren't taking notice and making changes around that actually doing it, do you think?
We have to do something about this because we are fallible people. We are trying to do the right thing, but we are fallible. We are just, we are small, pegs in this big game. And you go into a restaurant, you have something on the table sitting there telling you to order something. That's probably something you should never order. You go to a store, every aisle is the end of the aisle or the cash register area is filled with stuff you should never buy. You open a telly and you turn it on the sports. Every ad you see is something you should never buy and eat. Like how the hell can we operate if everything we see around us is basically something that should be maybe illegal? And our brain is like, it can't be bad if my hero LeBron James is drinking Gatorade or Coke or whatever at a bullshit. Like, I mean, it can't be. It has to be good. I mean, it can't be bad. Even if I know it's bad, I mean, that guy's doing it, and I see it all around me. So we have normalized this to a level. It's like tobacco. I mean, many people don't remember this, but in 60s and 50s, tobacco was advertised by doctors.
Right.
There was a doctor smoking in every ad, and I recommend by doctors that calms the nerves or whatever for women. And I mean, of course, 60% of people smoke. And now you go to some countries like Sweden, less than 10% of people smoke cigarettes. And you go out on the street, you see somebody smoking, you're like, what the hell is happening? Like, who is that person? Low life. And I mean, we don't smoke anymore because we vilified smoking. And that happened by regulation. It took, many lawsuits and a lot of time. And now nobody is saying that, smoking is good. And nobody feels good about smoking. It feels like I'm some sort of a thug in a way. We have to do the same for this food. But you can't do it before we have stopped normalizing it. And like in America, not in any other country, I think, at least I know, you can advertise unhealthy food to kids in kids programming on TV. That is just unbelievably silly. And you can also have the big food paying for the school food in the US. I don't think any other country, I hope, in the world does that.
Right, where you have the canteen lunch brought to you by insert large brand name here. I'm not going to do one because I'll probably get thrown under a bus. Do you think that you identified right up front there as this is a global issue and it's happening, but it kind of, America in some respects is leading the world, not enviably. Are there microcosms, and you just noted Sweden as an example, but are there microcosms or societies where there has been a large pushback and those health outcomes are different? Is there anyone who's leading the world in the positive sense with regards to these kind of fundamental health choice, nutrition issues?
Every country is eroding. I was in Japan the last summer. We spent quite a bit of time traveling around the country. And you look at Japanese people, their obesity rate is less than 10%. So they have yet had the impact of the Western diet. But you look at the young people, it's happening already there. They have very strong culture of food. And, if you go to Japan, you go there possibly because of the unbelievable food they have, sushi, all this wonderful food that, it's like, and it's taken the world over. But, you see Starbucks in every corner now. You see a lot of these unhealthy foods popping up. So I think people are also there losing their own tradition and going away to the Western diet. I don't think there's any country in the world today that is saving itself. I think Norway and Sweden are probably, they have people with, there's a huge culture of, activity. People, like in Norway, people go hiking every day. You have access to nature like nowhere else in the world. But even in Finland, you look at, I've been out of Finland for 20 years and I go back and it looks very different than it did when I was there. So they are also getting a lot heavier faster. And there are some really problems that, people might not think about. But if you take countries like Singapore, I really applaud what they're doing. And Singapore is a little bit unique because they are kind of democratic, but they are still ruled by a single party in a sense. So they can make decisions quick like China. But what they have done now, they have said that obesity is a national emergency. And they are putting money behind it. They are trying to sort it out. They are banning advertising. They're doing a lot of things that are really clever and smart. And the problem they have had is that the Western diet came there quickly because the country got wealthy quickly and it changed drastically. So their issue was that they went from this relatively good diet that was very existing for 1,000 years into Western diet. And they didn't get really obese, but they got diabetes. So you see there are a lot of people who are not really gaining a lot of weight, but they are already sick metabolically and people are dying young. So we are seeing countries where the life expectancy is tipping down. In the US today, we have lost 3 years in the last 10 years of life expectancy. Think about it. We lost 3 years. Only time it happened before was in the Second World War and in the Black Death in Europe when half people died of
1500s.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm curious, like kind of changing gears here a little bit, because I mean, I'm kind of, again, reading between the lines and push back if I'm pushing too hard on this, but there seems to be, and you kind of talked about it right up front in terms of your own behaviors and your athlete, there's kind of a division of people, those who are actively trying to do really well with their health and they read the information and they act on the information and they overwhelmingly look to make good choices and often will make bad choices either through lack of information or lack of access to product, but the intention and the effort is there. When you start to look at that population or that group of people, and I don't know how big that group is, but if you assume that 70% of the US has a chronic condition, you would assume that 30% don't, and therefore that must be the percentage that are a little more focused on their things, all other things being equal. And I know that's a blunt measure. I want to understand how people who are trying to do the right thing and are pushing back on the default and the messages, how they're engaging with their health, especially around nutrition, because that feels to me like the fundamental basis of where Elo is kind of positioned to help and to elevate. Would that be correct?
It is a lot of coastal thing, and it's also a wealth thing because, the good nutrition, good food is by default more expensive. And if you want to eat really good food, we tend to eat organic food nearby. We live in San Francisco. I mean, we spend a lot of money in food. I mean, way more than most people probably could. And that is a problem. We have a lot of people living in places where you have food desert, where you don't have access to produce. You can't really get good food. And you have 7-Eleven or whatnot that, they don't sell anything good. I mean, I don't think there's even apple you can buy from there because it's apple that is not made to eat. It's made to be a kind of thing on the fireplace, next to the fireplace. So that's the apple type, by the way, that it's not even meant to be eaten ever. I mean, that's kind of funny to me. I heard it last week. Didn't know before. But anyway, like the point is that Elo is trying to simply make, I think you said it really well in the beginning, that we are trying to make the information more available. We are trying to do that, and we are also trying to gamify. I built games for a decade. We're trying to make it easier for you to do the right thing. And I don't think you're going to do the right thing by default. You will do the right thing if you see the outcome of the bad thing. So we're trying to take all the data from your body, like I use, Apple Watch and an Oura Ring and a Whoop and a glucose monitor. I have a blood pressure cuff here because my doctor, warned me. So I have all the stuff, next to me, and I'm 40, 45, pretty healthy, but, I want to live, a healthy life until I'm 90, I hope. But my point is that we are today more geared to people like me who are looking to live good life and already taking the initiative, already willing to spend the money. That's the core group who are buying products today. But we are every day trying to find ways to get into the people who really need the help. And of course, the challenge is that they might be working 2 jobs. They might be busy. They might not have the income today to use stuff that we built. And that makes me feel bad in a way, because I'm not trying to build and divide us even more and build companies that, we help the people who are already healthy to make them even healthier. And then we neglect the people who need the help the most. But it's also when you build new stuff. I mean, we are one of the only companies in the world who is now building products that are personalized to you. So we built powders and gummies and supplements in the beginning. And you can take a blood test and then you can get customized. You can get 3D printed gummy vitamins made to you out of 500 million combinations. It sounds like Star Trek. And maybe not everybody needs that, but we are trying to push the envelope and do something super innovative. And I hope these innovations then go down in price and become mass market in a medium long term. And we are also really working hard at Elo and other companies in this space who are trying to find ways, how do we get other people to pay for this? How do we get the health plan or the employer to pay for this or subsidize it? Because we know that if we give people the good nutrition, good food, and even supplements in some cases, we can help people before they get sick. And that to me is the biggest conundrum here. Like, it's very difficult to help somebody who has type 2 diabetes, who has already, lost a couple toes. They are about to have an amputated leg. Maybe they are losing the eyesight. That person reversing it is very, very difficult today. But if you have somebody who is in their 40s, who is maybe obese, but they have still maybe 10, 15 years before they get that sick, for that person, we can definitely help them and turn it around, and they can live great life until 90. Otherwise, they will likely die at 70.
Yeah. Hey, so I want to get into some of the chemistry, I guess, of functionally how this stuff works, and you kind of ran through it quickly, so I want to sort of come back. And if you take someone who has an intention in trying to do well for themselves, and they're trying to put the best thing they can into their body, regardless of whether they live in a food desert or otherwise, I think, as a kind of a side note, it's expensive. I mean, I worked in financial services in the US, in low-income kind of financial services products, and there was a refrain in financial services that it's expensive to be poor, right? And this was an observation that, there's 80 million people in the US who are unbanked. And I think there's some parallels here in kind of nutrition and availability of health, that when you can't go and buy, I've literally got, a bunch of fruit sitting in a bowl here on a table right next to me. If you can't go and access that, you then go and buy whatever food is available to you. And that food, calorie for calorie, pound for pound, is actually very expensive. It's not good for you, but it's also a very expensive way to eat, because it's actually far cheaper to be able to buy fresh food and make your own food than it is to buy anything that's been mass manufactured, even if that's done at some ridiculously efficient price, to your point earlier. So coming back a step from that tangent, you've got someone who is already living the best version of what they're doing nutrition-wise, where they might not have access to organic, or they cannot justify buying it, but they're at least eating fresh fruit and vegetables as best they can. And when they choose bread off the shelf, they try to produce, use the least processed version of that. What is the resulting kind of chemical or biomarker profile that you typically will see from someone who's doing the best that they can? And then where does Elo and the kind of the 3D printed gummies fit in? We'll start with that product. There's two other products I want to talk about as well. Help me understand what we don't know, what the gap is, and then what gap that fills.
Yeah, when we started, our goal was at the company to focus first on fully go to D2C. So go to consumers, who are interested about this, somewhat like biohacker, health optimizer crowd. And that crowd was basically buying and coming in, and what we wanted to do with them is to first validate what you need. Because, you don't really know what you need if you haven't tested yourself. So we put them in a test bench in a way that you did a blood test. So that you had to come in and do a blood test with pretty broad panel testing, your lipid panel like cholesterol, triglycerides, HDL, LDL, also vitamins, minerals, and A1C, which is the diabetes marker, and also inflammation, homocysteine. So we looked pretty much, everything you normally don't look when you go to normal doctor office. And then we said that, okay, we see that, you have low vitamin D. By the way, more than half the people come with low vitamin D that they don't know. Nobody has ever tested before. Vitamin D is a pretty important, maybe the most important simple vitamin you can fix. Then we, of course, we help you to fix that. We often see that, maybe 30-40% of people have A1C that's too elevated. If you go 6 in the US, you are diabetic. If you are 5.7, 5.9, you are pre-diabetic. So we had like 40% of people there. And then, of course, cholesterol, many people, 50 million people eat, medication for cholesterol, like mainly LDL is elevated. So those are the common things. 80% of people who we tested in the beginning, about 5,000 people, they had an issue. And, these are pretty much the healthy people who come in. And 80% of people had something on yellow and red that they did not know about. So that gave us a focus. Okay, let's focus on that. But we also always ask them, what is your goal? And we have about 75,000 people today who have answered to that question. The biggest goal people want to do is lose weight. That's almost half the people. The second biggest goal, 40%, is energy.
It's energy.
So we let them pick three different goals. So, it's not 90% of people say one or two, but, you can pick three different goals. And then the rest is basically like, sport performance, it's inflammation, it's immunity. Of course, COVID happened, so immunity became very big for a moment. Then you have a lot of long tail. Like some people want to have bone health and, heart health and whatnot. We have about 15, 16 things. So we know from a pretty broad number of people, 75,000 people roughly, what they have responded. And to me, energy and weight loss are almost intertwined. So it kind of boils down to 75% of people saying that those are the two goals that they have. And that was a surprise to me because I was expecting more healthier people who want to optimize. And some people came to us. And it was funny because, for first thousands of people we had, we got the results. And before we gave them any products, we made them so that they talk to our dietitians, our coaches. There was a 45-minute Zoom call that they talk. And often the calls were interesting in a way that the people had like goal, I want to be, climbing to Everest type of thing. And then the dietitian was like, well, you kind of need to change your diet or you're not going to live 70 years old. And right. I mean, people are like, what the hell? I was thinking I'm like optimized person, but I was actually sick. So that was epiphany to me. And I realized that very few people are totally healthy. And, I went through myself. I mean, like I said, I've been an athlete all my life. And people look at me, they're like, wow, I mean, you look great. You're 45, you can do stuff that, most 20 people your age can't do. But, my team tested me in every way possible, like full body MRI, full sequencing, epigenetics, 250 blood tests that I've done. And they came back to and said, dude, like you have to change. I'm like, interesting. So
what did you have to change, by the way?
Yeah, my A1C was, I was pre-diabetic. And that's maybe more genetic, but I had been eating, maybe too many sugary drinks when I'm doing, endurance at athletic stuff. I also had my vitamin D was 14, and in the US scale, that means that I was severely deficient. And they sequenced my DNA. They found that I don't metabolize vitamin D like normal people. I live in California. It's sunny all the time. In Finland, I was living in northern Finland. My vitamin D must have been like in like non-existent. So they started to help me. It took me a year to get my vitamin D up to 70, where it's now. And I felt much better. So I had never taken a supplement in life. And I became a believer that, this micro-optimization can be valuable. But in the end, it's not about, supplementing. It's about eating the right diet, eating whole foods, eating, the right type of food for you. And I think the biggest thing for me, one of the biggest things was that when my team plugged me with a glucose monitor, we invested in a few companies in space with my fund. But, you have it on for 2 years and you learn that, I'm eating foods that I think are good for me, but are really like making me sick. Like I was having an oatmeal every morning. Oatmeal sounds very healthy, but it was spiking my glucose like crazy. Maybe I had been eating it too many. I ate it for like 20 years every morning. So I stopped that. I stopped white rice. I stopped tamales. I stopped corn. And I don't spike almost ever again like that. And I feel much more stable. I feel much more energetic. And I feel actually I perform better. I recover better. I have less inflammation. So, my life changed after I worked with our dietitians, our science team, our doctors who are unbelievably good. And I thought I was healthy. So I'm just an example of one. But a lot of people, had the same experience in the group that we worked with. And today, I think at Elo, last year, we felt that we have learned enough. And we decided to start taking the program and start taking the products we built into kind of B2B2C world. So today we are working and mainly focusing on helping other companies to power their systems to build better nutrition products for their customers.
And so help me understand that a bit. The science I fully understand. I actually do, before I want to get to the B2B2C part, because that's super interesting because it's system change beyond just the chemistry and of what you're doing. But you just sort of covered that there's, you have to get the fundamentals right. You should be eating a lot of whole foods. But you then also provide products that supplement. They're not necessarily supplements, but they supplement or enhance or fill gaps in what it is based on blood work. So help me just understand, like, where you see the role of that is getting it from 80% to 100%, or like what happens when you start to add supplements into the system that changes the health outcomes?
Yeah, I think the supplements, like I said, they help to supplement. And to me, I was not a big believer before, but then I realized that, almost everybody have problems that can be fixed. And they can be fixed like almost like using supplements and nutrition like medicine. You have a certain problem, let's be very specific about it and tackle that one thing. And I know it's difficult because human biology is very complicated. And often we don't have one problem, we have 5 problems. So you have to kind of pick what to focus on. But I think, like we have a massive issue, for example, with women who are 40 plus. Almost all of them get too little protein. Think about if you're a woman and you're 40 over, how much protein you are having. And how do you take protein in? Because the problem is that, a lot of people get frail. And, when you are 80 years old, you can live a good life, but then you have a one accident. You have, you're frailty, you fall and you break your hip. People who break their hip at 80, they normally die within a year or 2. And they might have lived 10 years more. But if you have more muscle mass, the muscle mass is helping. And what I didn't know before, I train now a lot more weight training as well, because if you have muscle, the muscle is basically this sort of a buffer against your health issues, because muscle is burning energy. So you're not going to get fat if you have more muscle. If you have muscle at 50, like good muscle mass, then you're not going to get frail until you are older, because you're going to lose muscle mass every year when you get older. You can't really gain it anymore. So those are some of the things that I think, like, protein is important. And I realized most people have protein deficiency that they don't know of, or they take protein only once a day. The latest science is very surprising. In the last 2 years, we have discovered that, you can take protein maybe 3 times more throughout the day than we thought before. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Like, it's not like you take protein once or twice a day, but you can take it maybe 4 times a day. And of course, protein will then initiate, growth vectors in your body that can also cause some negative things. So you kind of have to balance it out. And the other thing is that you have a lot of these, vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. You have iron is a very common issue that a lot of women have again. The vitamin D is a common issue. So if you don't know what you need, you can't really help yourself. Most people go to vitamin store and there's a million different things. Like, how do you know what you buy? You don't listen to me I'm in a podcast talking about this topic. I don't know what your problem is. Go be tested. Understand from your diet what you need. Don't go buy something that Huberman or somebody else will recommend, because they don't know you. You are N of 1 still.
Yeah. And so I guess the thing that I'm still, and I share some of your maybe prior skepticism about supplements. And I don't have like rigorous data to base this on, but the heuristics around the friends in my life who take a bunch of supplements and always seem to be sick anyway. And maybe that's just their own measure of themselves, but also purely at a biochemical kind of, the way the body ingests. If you just simply put a supplement into someone's body, does the body actually have the ability to make use of it? So at a pure chemistry level, if you notice that someone is deficient in, vitamin D or iron or whatever the thing, a supplement actually being ingested is a way of actually enhancing that. Is that what you see in people's blood work when you test them a year later when they've been on the gummies? Is that you actually can see the shift in these things and can link that to the taking of the supplements? I guess that's the thing that I'm asking.
Yep, 100%. So,
yeah.
But you have a great point. I think, we can see it in the blood, and, we have seen it by, for thousands of people. So that's very clear. And I think we don't have a biggest data set, but we have a decent data set already that has done it, because a lot of people haven't done it, many times back to back to validate it. We built AI models now that know pretty well what to do, how much to give people. But people are a bit different. Like I don't metabolize vitamin D like many people, so I had to take a lot more, maybe 3 times more than most people. But I think your point is very good, which is that what is the impact of different things? Because if you test your blood, it might not matter if you need that mineral, vitamin molecule in your cells. Is it getting from your bloodstream into your cells, or is it going from your bloodstream into your urine and out of the body? We have little data today on that. And think about what you have to do, basically. You have to drill holes to a person. to the fat tissue and to the muscle tissue and then test that. That is pretty unfun to do.
There's people who are doing that?
Well, that's the way to test it, because you pretty much have to take a biopsy and test, their cells. And then, where? That is a really difficult thing to do. We haven't done that a lot as a scientific community. I don't think we know today, to be fair, how we metabolize different things. And I think one example is iron. And I mentioned iron already, and, it's very important. But also, the iron is a very difficult thing to do, because if you eat meat or you eat food with iron, it is in a certain construct of a molecule within a molecule. And we as a body, we look at that molecule structure that is carrying the iron, and we notify it, and then we bring that to the right place in the body, and then we metabolize it. If you put iron, raw iron, into your body, what happens? It rusts. And it's almost like a luck if you get any of that iron to go in the right place in your body. And I mean, it can cause more harm than good. So iron is a very difficult thing to supplement. There's a company in Sweden called Ironic. They are developing for the last decade iron that is actually encapsulated like the molecule in meat, without meat, that you can take in and it will go to the right place. I mean, they're still early, maybe 5 years to develop it, make it work. But that simple thing could help billion people today who are iron deficient. But it's very complicated. Like, we offer 80 different things today at Elo, 80 different type of ingredients that are scientifically validated. We don't have things like NAD that is not validated enough with humans. All the things we have are human validated. But 80 is a lot of research. We have thousands of studies that our AI has been fed. But if you look at the studies in the end, we don't have a lot of insight about one, like let's say green tea, very studied substance. I think it's a good thing to have green tea, maybe not at night, but having it helps. Japanese people are super healthy. Maybe green tea has one impact there. But the point is that you look at the studies, they're often done to people that are maybe 50 people, 60 people studies, and maybe not, even longitudinally more than a 6 month. Like, do we really know what it does? We haven't done a 100,000 people study. Like, you think about now, like the Ozempic or like the COVID vaccines. We have tested these things with 20 million people today. We know a lot, but we don't really know that much today on the food studies. And think about one more point here that people don't really maybe know. I'm saying to the world that I would love to see all the studies in food and nutrition that have never been published. Because think about it, often it's industry who is paying for the study. They know what they want to get out of the study, and they happily publish the study that says chocolate is making your sex life better. Let's publish that. It's great. But if it says that it doesn't, nobody will publish the study. So there probably are more studies that have never been published that would be very interesting to look, because you could learn more from those studies than from the ones that were published, I think.
That's a whole nother tangent for a whole other show. I want to get back to the Ozempic thing, by the way, because this is kind of, I don't know, in the zeitgeist at the moment. You've got a company in Denmark, I think it is, that it's probably half of the GDP of Denmark is that company's market cap or something I heard the other day. Like, where does that fit into all this? Is this a fad? Is this a helpful, or is it problematic and taking us in the wrong direction? What's your opinion on Ozempic?
Novo Nordisk in Denmark, unbelievable story. There's a podcast about it I listened recently because I was really curious. I know some people there. I've been meeting them a few times, and it is Acquired podcast, great podcast. They had a long 3-4 hour story about the company. They're 100-year-old or more. They basically invented insulin, and they have saved many, many, many lives. It's only worked on the insulin space and metabolism. And then the team invented the GLP-1 drugs. Ozempic is, of course, the drug that they came up with that everybody now has heard about. It's in TV shows, in movies, and you can't really avoid it today. Oprah is talking about it every day. So what do? They are suppressing your appetite. So you take a injection once a week, and then almost immediately you feel less hunger. You feel less urge to eat, and you end up eating maybe once a day. And there are some side effects. Many people say today that we have side effects because people take them at the too high dose. let's see. I think we're going to see this in the coming years. But the value has been that people are losing on average 10 to 15% of their body weight. And if you are, obese, it means you go from obesity to not being obese. The drugs, of course, are very expensive. Here in the US, you pay over $1,000 a month. In Europe, in some countries, you pay $100 a month. So very different price point. So US system is just very ass backward on the pricing. We can have another hour discussion about that. It's very complicated. But I think the point is that we now have so-called miracle drug, because we have had drugs developed for a long time. Back in the days, there was a drug that was taken out of market. It was speed, basically. Not great for people to have speed every day to lose weight. I mean, you kind of go crazy. There's another drug that, caused heart attacks that, was taken out of market. But this seems to be the first drug now, a class of drugs that are people losing 10% or 20%. And we have now millions of people, 10 million plus people who are taking them weekly, and they do work, but there are a lot of these side effects. But this is the thing about the world we are thinking today. Like we talked about the nutrition, we talk about the advertising, we talk about the behavior change. This is a shortcut. It's whether are you taking the blue pill or the red pill in Matrix, basically. Are you taking the injections or are you going to change the behavior? And so far, it seems that most people are going to be voting for the injection instead of the behavior change. So is it going to do good for the society if we are basically medicating people for life with these expensive medications? So think about, in the US, if the cost is, let's say, $1,000, it means that we're going to be medicating people for life. We have 70% of people, or maybe half the people who qualify. Let's say half of people. That means $12,000 per year. In the US, we spend today $12,000 per person in healthcare total. So what are you're going to add another $2.5 trillion of healthcare costs in the US? I mean, I don't think we have the money, or the world has that money. So I don't think it can happen that way. But that's what some people think. And we're going to put it in the tap water. We're going to, feed it to children now. We talk about, injecting 12-year-olds already, and even 6-year-olds.
With Ozempic.
Yeah, that's been now approved in testing already in the US, that we're going to go down the train, down all the way to maybe 6-year-olds. So that feels to me like, we're doing something we have never done before, and we are doing very quickly. So these drugs have been around since 2005, 20 years today, and they've been treating type 2 diabetes. And our type 2 diabetes ratio has not gone down at all. And now they've been approved, a year or two ago for obesity as well. So I think they are interesting tool in the toolbox, and they are very needed for a lot of people because they're going to be jump starting. But I don't think they are today, at least yet, products that people can be for life. And what we recently did at Elo this week, actually, we launched a new product that is called GLP-1 protein support. So it's a product that we built for people who are taking Ozempic or GLP-1 drugs. It helps them to alleviate the side effects, like muscle loss and the gut issues, and also the fact that they are eating maybe once a day. They have even bigger nutrient deficiencies. So we built all that into one powder, and sent them like a daily meal replacement for the morning. And let's say that will be, I think the first product of this type in the world.
Yeah, I mean, my kind of intuition on this says that, we kind of talked about it right up front in the setup, that good nutrition is what you put in, what you don't put in, and simply having less of what you're taking, but not actually putting the stuff in that your body needs to metabolize or to regenerate or to operate, to respirate, or any of the things that the body needs to do, is not a solution in and of itself. It might be a pathway to, having the confidence to engage in better health outcomes, because you start to like the look of your own body and think, what else could I do to be healthier? And then start to go into, well, what do I actually need to put into my body, as opposed to now that I'm just eating less. So it does feel like it may play a role in that, but I worry behaviorally it becomes, part of the problem rather than part of the solution for the greater. The thing that's interesting and somewhat ironic about it, if it costs $1,000 a month and you spend $1,000 a month on things that would be useful and put into your body, that could be anything from, coaching and support to, the gummies to protein, or getting a gym membership, you would have probably the same, if not better outcomes. Obviously, it would require more work, Uh, but yeah, it seems odd that someone would choose to spend $1,000 rather than choose to put in $1,000 worth of the effort.
Yeah, and I think the last point on this is that we have a culture where we vilify a lot of people because they are too heavy and they are sick because of that. We people still think that they are like that because they don't have the willpower. This is an illness, and it is something that we need to treat like like we have an illness. We can't treat it by just do something different, like live better or whatever. There has to be tools to give to these people because we caused that by creating a system like we discussed already, that we are feeding people since they are 5 years old with food that they should never eat. So it's our fault as parents and as society. So we need to also bring tools that can help people then.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take, because I think as someone who has relatively good health for myself, I'm also 45, and I take a lot of keen interest in it. You're quite quick to jump to say, well, you have this choice as well. And, that doesn't show a huge amount of empathy, but also isn't practical, and, it doesn't actually help to solve the problem to simply say you should just go and resolve this yourself. The data's all there and the tools are all there. I think, there's this wonderful kind of approach to this. And if you think about this with a pure product hat on, is if you want the health outcomes or the outcome in any context, how do you make the thing that the person should be doing easier or not require any thinking at all? And again, like coming back to financial services, there was a lot of these hacks and tools and approaches that you could take forward to help someone improve their financial outcomes. In a lot of cases, it wasn't education. It was access to the tooling, or even taking the need to have to think about this away from the person. It was making part of their default behavior that enabled them to improve their financial outcomes when they were growing up in a context where they never got taught how to budget or anything that might look like good fiscal responsibility. Anyway, we've digressed. I do want to come back to the B2B2B2C point, because right up front, you kind of took it on the chin that right now, this feels to me like a Tesla Roadster, if I can make the analogy. Tesla was never going to build just Tesla Roadsters, but they understood that to get to market, they had to narrow in on a group of potential consumers who might buy a more expensive version of the product to prove out a whole bunch of the things to then take it to the mainstream. And it feels to me like Elo's at that point now where you have something that clearly works for a cohort of people, and your next move is to work out how to 10x or 100x. Can we talk about that for a minute? Because that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think, I built the same way, BetterDoctor. We were a doctor finder company that you go to the website, you find doctors, there's an app, you find doctors. And we were one of the early apps in this category. So that then, we couldn't make really money easily on that because you don't pay for an app, a website. But then we started to power 3,000 companies with that data. And that became a real business. And the impact was much bigger, like I said, from like 1 million people to 100 million people. So that's the way to have bigger impact. And now what we do at Elo, we were in a new market because we're one of the first companies in the world to do this, like really personalize. And we didn't really know whether you need to personalize. And we can still debate about it. I mean, do you need to be like this perfect? I don't think you have to. But we did it because, there were people who were, and we wanted to do it ourselves to test it out. And now when we go out, we decided there are 3 markets we want to focus on. The number one market we have been out working for over a year is in fertility. I mean, I already talked about, my background with my wife. It took us, over a decade to create a family. And we had a lot of drama in the way. I mean, I wanted to work in that market because it gave us so much. And I think, IVF, for example, is an unbelievable power to change people's lives. I mean, I don't know if anything really in medicine can help. I mean, you can't get a family, and then there's this magic thing that can help you get the family. And it's your kids you can create with tech in a way. And to me, it was fascinating. And I wanted to work in that market first. So we built a product line in fertility that is now in the market in the US. So we help women and men who are suffering and not being able to have a family. We help them to get nutrition that will help them to maybe make it easier or more likely to do that. And also when you get them pregnant, help them to get a healthy pregnancy and avoid miscarriages and avoid different issues that can have with the pregnancy, especially when you're older. And then the other point we focus on is obesity that we already talked about. The GLP-1 protein is the first product of this type that we built. We're going to build many more, I hope, and try to work with a lot of companies. There are hundreds of companies today who are building products for, selling these drugs. We are trying to build nutrition products that can be supplemental and companion for these drugs. I mean, that's something that I don't think many people have done yet. We are trying to kind of build really good tools there. And then the third area is in this fact that, we don't move enough. We don't sleep enough. So what can we do there? So we're going to focus on sleep. And I think I'm very passionate about sleep myself, because I think sleep is the single most impactful thing. Because you look at this in a way, like I already told, I fast every quarter for 5 days. I don't eat for 5 days and I don't die. If I don't sleep for 5 days, I probably go insane. So sleep is pretty important. Of course, you have to drink also. Like if you don't drink water, you're going to probably die as well. But sleeping is a very important thing. And many people, they don't sleep well. We have maybe half the people today who sleep too little, or they don't sleep at enough quality. And that is making them sick as well. So if you don't sleep enough and then you don't eat well and you don't move, that is a combination that will kill you 100%. We're all going to die in the end, but you don't want to die at age 60 in a heart attack. So those are the kind of the 4 areas or 3 areas that we focus on. And we have really good products, of course, for the people who are athletic and so forth. So we're not going to neglect that area. So we are starting to work with a lot of companies who are building tools for people to be more active. Think about like tracking apps or wearable devices and others that people use today. And more than 50 million people today in the US have a sport tracker they use on a weekly basis. And that's a great group of people we can go and help them to build new nutrition products. So I can't really name too many names yet on companies we work with because we are early innings. But it's been super interesting because now we are getting to a level where the doctors are talking about the products and introducing them to the people. Or it might be a brand that you already love, and they come to you and say, hey, here's a product that might be branded with that company's brands, and they might have a community of 100 million people already. So that is, again, a way to go from 10,000 people to, I hope, million people. I hope we have million people, using our products in the next 10 years.
Yeah. And so we don't need to name names, but I think at a practical level, you would say that right now you've had to build a community of people who are interested in biohacking, to use your term earlier, and see this as a solution to, I don't know if I have a deficit. I take a test. Now I know I have some deficits, and then you can print me a customized gummy, or I can get these other powders, and the gummies are 500 million different variations. So it's highly, highly personalized. To your point, maybe too personalized. You're about to have one of the gummies.
Well, let me just show you, because I find it so captivating because, I love it. The one thing I really love about this is that, we have the Elo pill pack. So this is where we started. We started to make, a pack that, comes with your name on. And it has, my pack has 7 pills. And then this is the same thing. This gummy has the same pills as here. And it's a one gummy that, we have 7 layers that are 3D printed together. And it's tasty. You can pick your own flavor. You can pick yuzu or sweet apple. You can pick blood orange. And then it's just, and it's no sugar. It looks sugar, but it's a sugar alternative. And it only has 10 calories. So we made it fun. And it tastes great. So that was the idea. You said Tesla Roadster. And I love my Tesla. It's a better car than anything else I ever had before. I have the Y. And it's not that Elon Musk, we can debate about him as a person, but he didn't build a better electric car. He built a better car. When you build something new, we started to look at, I'm not a supplement kind of guy, but I don't think anyone loves swallowing 7 pills. It sucks. And we were like, how to make it better? And we went around the whole world and we found this amazing company who can 3D print gummies. They invented this whole idea. And we're like, we have to work with you. And now we have been working for about a year or more. And we did this product and we give it to people. Nobody goes back to the pills because it's equally effective. We did the test on that. And it's tasty and beautiful. So when you build a new product, you have to make it not 2 times better, but 10 times better. And when you do that, then I think people will come.
Right. And in so far as how you get that out to, I don't know any of the companies, but I'm going to name one that you've not obviously mentioned, and I don't know if they're one or not, but take someone like Strava. It's a community of, probably 100 million people who ride bikes and go for runs. And ultimately Strava is saying to this group of people who are already self-selecting for their health, hey, we think there's more that you could be doing if you want to get more PBs or be more connected or sleep better, which will then get you more PBs. And your aim here at Elo is not just to be the only source of this, but to say this stuff should be everywhere. It doesn't matter whether it's coming from your employer or from the health app that you use or from the company that is doing the sleep apnea thing that you just bought. There's no reason why you shouldn't have access to this type of outcome here. And our goal is to work out how to get it in the hands of hundreds of millions of people. And in a practical sense, that basically means saying that the product becomes ubiquitous and it's really the communities that product shows up in, but it's all the same back-end technology underneath it. Did you say it's the same playbook that you essentially did?
100%. 100%. Yeah, so that's the idea. Like it is basically the Intel Inside method, and it's, I think it's a great model because it's not that trivial. I mean, I spent like 4 years of my life on building nutrition products, and it's not that hard, but it is pretty hard. And it's not like you can do it overnight. And we do it really well today. We can scale it up. We can integrate it. We have APIs. We have the data integration. So, as an example, I went to a bike ride just before we started. I did my classic loop at Hawk Hill here, one of the best climbs in the world, pretty moderate climb. And now if I go to Elo app today, so my Strava ride is now already in Elo app. I have a notification in my watch that tells me that, take 1 scoop of protein that I did already. So we have fully integrated the Strava already using Apple Health, even if we don't maybe work directly with Strava. They have 120 million people globally today who are tracking its community for me. I use it a lot more than I use Facebook or Instagram because that's my community. So that's a great example, I think. And I think, many of those companies, what they can do, they can add a new revenue stream to the business. They can enhance the outcomes. Like you said, you can get faster, better, but you can also get healthier. And lastly, I think, they can make the consumers even more sticky that they have if they provide them more products. Because, the supplements are kind of interesting product. You take them every day. So you have a one more brand moment with your brand. So I have Elo moments today 3 times a day, which is pretty unique to any brand. Maybe Apple is the only one that I have so many moments with the brand.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating model. And the reason why I've kind of wanted to drill back into it and come back to it, I think so many people who are innovating and have a new innovation kind of they're almost egotistical in wanting to be known to be the thing, that is the thing. And they want everyone to come to them and create a whole new paradigm, not realizing that if their ultimate aim is to get the most amount of leverage to have the biggest impact, they actually need to be Intel. They need to be everywhere that those conversations and those communities already are. And they should be not thinking just about, to your point, making a car, not just a better electric car, but also about all of the things that go into the delivery of that so that that delivery of that car can happen anywhere that it needs to happen to maximize the take-up rather than the take-up just directly through my shop or through my particular brand. I think it's an absolutely fascinating insight. Like if you had to have, cast forward into the year or, next 18 months, like what would be the number one thing for you that you're like, this is a measure of us having taken the next step change, as a company and the impact we're trying to make?
Yeah, these things, what we're doing today, they are always like a pivot. And in a pivot sense in a company, you have to focus again your resources. You kind of have to bet everything again. You go to the roulette board, you put everything on the red, or maybe even number 13.
All right.
That's what you do in a startup. And, we did that a year ago. And now I think, we have a pretty good momentum right now. But I hope in a year, end of next year, I hope we have, tens of thousands of more people who are coming from these partners. And I hope that we have tackled all these different areas I explained, which are the fertility and sleep and obesity and maybe the activity. So maybe having a handful of partners that are not small partners, but these real interesting companies who have millions of people today. And if we are there, then we are off the races. Then it's really like world is almost the oyster that where do you go next? And how do you build this into a real platform? Because once you get to no company today ever in the personalized nutrition has gotten more than 50,000 people. Nobody has done it yet. So nobody really has scaled. And 50,000 is not that many because, we have in the US 129 million people today taking supplements every day. It's pretty big market. So I think once you get to 100, I'm really one of the first companies to get to 100,000 people. If you get there, I think you can get to 1 million. But it's really, really, really hard to get to the 100,000.
Yeah. Well, Ari, I hope we've caught your 0 to 1 or 1 to 10 moment because I'd love to look back at this in 18 months and revisit. But thank you so much for coming on the show today and going deep and going to the rabbit holes. It was an absolute pleasure for me, and I'm super interested and can't wait to see what you guys come up with. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Shape the System. As usual, if you'd like to suggest a guest, someone that you know who's helped change a system for the better, please go to www.shapethesystem.org, click on the top right-hand corner, then click Suggest Guest. Make sure that you click subscribe so that you get the new episode. Shape the System is an independent podcast with support from KPMG High Growth Ventures. Connects founders to the services they need along their journey. Whether you are looking to refine your strategy, mature your finance function, prepare for a capital raise, expand abroad, or simply comply with regulatory requirements, they provide you with the support you need to drive your business forward.